being here. And I want to pick up where Colonel Milburn left off. He believes that there should be longer-range weapons sent to Ukraine. Would you approve of that?
100%. He's absolutely correct. I mean, my criticism of this administration was before the invasion, we wouldn't put weapons in. And since the invasion, we've slow-walked this process. You know, first it was Stingers, then it was Javelins, then HIMARS.
Help people understand that. Those are missiles that don't go as far as the ones you think would solve the problem.
So what the problem right now is the Iranian drones are going into Crimea, and the Ukrainians can't hit those Iranian drones unless they have the longer-range artillery called the ATACMS. For some reason, I was with Secretary Austin at the Halifax National Security Forum. For some reason, they will not put those weapons into Ukraine. Martha, when we give them what they need, they win. And this could be not, it doesn't have to be
Does it further incite Russia if they do?
Well, Crimea is not part of Russia under international law. So if it can hit into Crimea, I think that's fair game. And I think the problem is they don't want to be provocative. And we give them what they need, they win. If we don't, it's going to be a long, protracted war.
And Congressman Turner, you were recently in Ukraine about a month ago. I know you've suggested that Republicans will make matters difficult for the White House to pass more Ukrainian aid. Will you make it more difficult? And how do you view this?
No, it's not an issue of difficulty. It's an issue actually just of accountability. Martha, first of all, thank you for going to Ukraine. I mean, that your piece shows what Putin said, the opposite of what Putin said, which is they are a country. They do have spirit, and they are winning. I went to Ukraine in a bipartisan group for the sole purposes of telling President Zelensky that he does have continued support, and he will have bipartisan support. The issue, obviously, is we don't need to pass $40 billion large Democrat bills that have been being passed to send $8 billion to Ukraine. What we're going to do, and it's been very frustrating, obviously, even to the Ukrainians, where they hear these large numbers in the United States as a result of the, burgeoned Democrat bills and the little amount of aid that they receive. We're going to make certain they get what they need. And as you saw, and in your piece you said, the other thing they need is air defense. And that actually is a vulnerability on our part. Our air defense systems are so complex, we need to make certain that we work with partners and pull together an air defense system that they can put together to defend Kyiv, to defend their infrastructure.
And we know what Leader McCarthy has said about this. He's not going to write a blank check. And you have colleagues like Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, Thomas Macy of Kentucky, who are unlikely to support more aid. So are you really certain that Republicans will bring this to the floor?
Well, I think, as Mike said, I think the majorities on both sides of the aisle support this effort. I think, everybody has a voice in Congress. And the fact is, we are going to provide more oversight, transparency, and accountability. We're not going to write a blank check. The last $40 billion package that passed, Martha, it was given to us the day of the vote. And members only had a matter of hours to go through all these pages of $40 billion supplemental.
Some of it's long-term aid, though. It's not just...
It was long-term, and to be honest, a lot of this went to backfill our stockpiles. However, the Republicans are not going to rule like that. We have a voice now, and we're going to do this in an accountable way with transparency to the American people. These are American taxpayer dollars going in. Does that diminish our will to help the Ukrainian people fight? No, but we're going to do it in a responsible way. And I think it's very important that the American people understand what's at stake here. If we lose in Ukraine, Chairman Xi is going to look at Taiwan. And the Ayatollah is already all in with Russia and China in this fight. And Kim Jong-un now is providing artillery shells to Russia to fight the Ukrainians.
And Congressman Turner, you were in Madrid for NATO's Parliamentary Assembly. Republicans have long said more NATO members need to give more. How do you do that? I mean, President Biden has held that NATO alliance together. He's got 40 nations who've all contributed. How do you get them to do more?
Well, they are doing more, and they are doing a lot. And there's some exciting things happening in NATO. Obviously, where Putin was saying that he was really fighting against the West, not just Ukraine and the expansion of NATO. He's now going to be welcoming Sweden and Finland into the NATO alliance. They were there as part of our meeting, being welcomed into joining NATO. Seeing the expansion of NATO has got to be very difficult for Putin because he wanted the opposite. The entire Ukrainian delegation was there, and President Zelensky himself spoke at the meeting, as he has remotely. This is very important because he continues to show, as you know, the resolve that they intend to win, that they are a country and they're going to fight. And you were talking about, bipartisan support. The president's got some difficulties in his own party. As you know, 30 members of his party sent a letter saying, although we're for aid, you should immediately begin negotiating some form of surrender from Ukraine.
They withdrew that letter, as you know.
The letter was so embarrassing to the president that the 30 members who had signed on to it had to immediately withdraw that letter. And what that letter said was, we agree to give them aid, but basically the White House should decide who lives under an authoritarian regime, under Russia, with these atrocities and murderousness, and who's going to live under freedom. That certainly isn't helpful to the White House.
And I want to turn now to the next Congress. I know you, Congressman McCaul, want to look at Afghanistan and the withdrawal. That was clearly a deeply flawed withdrawal. But what is it exactly that you want to do, and questions you want to ask about President Biden's role?
Well, I'd like to, the veterans deserve this, first and foremost, Martha. You and I spent a lot of time in Afghanistan. The way it was done was such a disaster and such a disgrace to our veterans that served in Afghanistan. They deserve answers to the many questions we have. Why wasn't there a plan to evacuate? How did it go so wrong? Why can't I have access to the dissenting cable from the embassy, from the 32 or 23 employees out of the embassy that basically disagreed with the administration's policies? And they were lied to, remember? We're not going to fly off the top of the embassy like Saigon. This is not going to be a disaster. And this was the turning point. When Afghanistan fell, Putin looked at Ukraine, and we saw the Russian Federation troop buildup around Ukraine right at the same time, around August. Then she's looking at Taiwan, Ayatollah Kim Jong-un, against a free world and democracy.
And I want to move on to what else the Republicans might be looking at. We've heard about Hunter Biden's laptop. Congressman Turner, do you view that as a matter for the Intelligence Committee? What are they looking at there?
Right. So I think one thing that's going to be very, very positive about this Congress is we're going to get back to the committees working again. And with the committees working, they're going to be focusing on their areas of jurisdiction. We're going to take the Intelligence Committee from what was an impeachment committee, a partisan committee, back to national security. Now, there certainly are issues with respect to Hunter Biden's laptop that are going to have to be looked at.
Impeachment issues, you believe?
No.
Not at all.
The impeachment issue was Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, and where our committee was taken off the rails. Our committee is going to focus on national security and our adversaries. We have real adversaries where the committee hasn't been focused again. We do need to, however, do oversight to the intelligence community as to what they are doing, and we will do that, and we'll do it vigorously. But we're going to be their partner also in making sure they have the tools that we need. We need to move at the speed of our adversaries, and we're going to start doing that.
Do you think that Kevin McCarthy will be the Speaker of the House? Do you think he has the votes?
I do. And because, first of all, Kevin has worked harder than any other candidate for Speaker I've seen. I think he's got the majority of our conference. And the fact is, what's the alternative here? Kevin has proven to be the leader of the Republican House, and I do think he will get the votes to 218 on January 3rd.
Agree.
Absolutely. He is the leader. He's been the leader of our team, and he's going to stay the leader of our team. And I certainly look forward to when we get past January 3rd that we can get to work, get these committees back to doing the job that they're supposed to do. And as you've been saying, turn back to national security. When you introduced us as committees that focus on national security. We're going to make certain that we're back to doing that we actually look at our adversaries and we look at how we can make America strong.
And Congressman, just one quick question here about the border. You represent Texas. This week on the border, Kevin McCarthy called on the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas to resign, saying if he doesn't, he will seek to impeach him. Do you support those efforts?
Look, you have to build I was a federal prosecutor, right? You got to build a case. You need the facts, evidence before you indict. Has he been derelict in his responsibilities? I think so. I have a wide open border in my home state. We have all these people coming in. We don't know who they are. Terrorist watch list. Fentanyl's coming in, killing more young people than ever before. Really almost 100,000 now, which if you look at the Vietnam War, equals what we lost in Vietnam over 20 years. So I think, they are complicit with the biggest human trafficking event of our lifetime. And I think the American people deserve some accountability.